well, it is not problem. If something is perfect, it is boring.
Exactly. Yeah.
Agreed.
This is what we say every time we put out an episode.
Good point.
Good point. Yeah.
I'm Charlie Sohn, a screenwriter and journalist.
I'm Agnes Reese, a pop singer and songwriter.
And this is Mysteries of the Euroverse.
On this episode, we're talking about Eurovision's plans for global takeover.
First, we use the occasion of Montenegro returning to the contest to explore the ways that Eurovision can make it easier for even more countries to join.
Then, we talk to 2012 Montenegrin Eurovision contestant Rambo Amadeus, whose Euro Nero explores the complications of integrating into the larger European project.
Finally, we sit down with comedian Nico Carney to explore Montenegro's previous entrance in a game we're calling The Full Montenegro.
Take a look behind the scenes at all the scandal songs and queens. So come along as we traverse all the mysteries of the Euroverse. All the mysteries of the Euroverse.
We are back with another episode of Mysteries of the Euroverse. Magnus, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. Almost time for Eurovision.
I know. I am so excited. And you know who else is excited? Montenegro.
Yes, we are back. And Montenegro is back.
Yes, yeah.
Eurovision in some ways functions a little bit like a family reunion. Some people go every year. Some people come and go.
And then there's that drunk uncle who's always arguing for genocide.
Right. Montenegro, for example, was in the contest last time in 2022.
Yes.
But they were absent in 2023 and 2024.
If Eurovision's goal is to expand, it's worth sort of looking at what, concerns of, let's say, a country like Montenegro might be.
How do we expand? And is that new countries? Is it returning countries? Is it both?
Yes, 100%.
And how do you navigate all that?
I do think this year it is even more important that we put the lens on this, both because obviously Montenegrin, new to Eurovision, has talked a lot about expanding the coalition. The other reason why this is actually becoming a very important issue is that Putin has decided to relaunch the Intervision Song Contest.
Yeah.
Intervision started as the sort of Eastern Bloc counterpart to Eurovision. Putin brought it back in 2008, and it was much more of a top-down, pro-Russia kind of contest. It does seem like there are a lot of countries that have signed on, including countries that are democracies. So if you think of Eurovision as a soft power institution to advance a set of values, you actually do care if, these countries end up under the umbrella of Intervision or if they have access to some form of Eurovision.
If expansion wasn't the point, we wouldn't have gone from 7 to, at one point, 41.
Yes.
At the same time, after 7 years, we would be a lot bigger if the values didn't matter. Then the question becomes about how you expand.
I think that's where we're going to start, which is kind of like one of the big reasons why countries say they can't continue participating in Eurovision. And this was Montenegro's reason for one of the times they dropped out,
right,
which is money.
Right.
One of the main ways that Eurovision is funded is through participation fees. In 2023, 6.2 million euros of the overall budget of Eurovision was coming from participation fees. However, the fees are pro rata. 2023, a country like Spain had to spend 340,000 plus euros for the right to participate. Whereas like Romania had about half that much, 180,000 euros. And meanwhile, North Macedonia, the last time they were in, which I believe was 2022, only paid 39,143 euros.
And what's included in that? The licensing fee of broadcasting the show.
Yeah.
Included in that is the right to participate that gives you that guaranteed slot in the semifinal. Or if you're Spain, for example, you contribute a lot more, you're guaranteed to be in the grand final.
Yes. Eurovision is currently in large part funded through participation fees. If the countries that are spending the most on participation fees are not happy and withdraw, Eurovision can't really happen in the way that it does. Whereas like a North Macedonia can drop out, in terms of the financial viability of Eurovision, it actually doesn't affect them. Culturally, there's an argument that they're actually very important. And these countries that we're talking about, particularly if you view Eurovision as having some bigger purpose, the former Yugoslavian countries like Montenegro, these are the countries in a way on the front lines of democracy, you know? So you really see a push and pull between Eurovision's financial interest and Eurovision's ideological purpose.
I love that the EBU does the pro rata fees because it makes it more possible for people to participate. But the challenge is there are some things that the EBU is not directly involved in the payment for at all that don't automatically get prorated. Eurovision is a very big, flashy show.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that these are public broadcasters. Yeah. So there is sometimes, even if you can afford it technically, and even if you could argue that this might even be good for tourism and it's good for our marketability to get our country out there, there is an element that when you're cutting lunch programs, when you're cutting healthcare, to see the cover of the newspaper be about like, this is how much it costs to take like Boobly Boobly Boo, the song, to Eurovision and put in sequins on it and like dancing spiders. From a PR standpoint within your country,
it can be tough.
A lot of the time, the argument for money isn't necessarily you can't afford it. This is the danger of when art becomes sport.
Right.
It's competition, there's a rank, and someone has to be the bottom.
So this actually brings us to the sort of next related point to the money, right? So we've talked about the participation fees, right? Literally like money getting in the way of a country showing up at Eurovision and being on the Eurovision stage. As we get into talking about props, effects, literally we could show up at Eurovision. We could send a guy with a guitar to sit on a stool on stage and sing. But why would we do that if we keep placing really poorly and therefore our population isn't interested in Eurovision because they just see us lose all the time?
Right.
And Montenegro is actually really interesting on this front, where when they dropped out in 2020, it was actually that they just weren't getting into the final.
Right.
You know? And so here's the fundamental problem. On the one hand, for the small countries, the participation fees are too high or feel too high for them. On the other hand, great, we're going to make sure your participation fees are as low as possible. And then we're going to get more of our money from these big countries who can afford it. The problem with doing that is then you're beholden to the big countries, right? And just as an example of where the politics and the finances interact is Eurovision kicks Russia out. A move that I, just to put it out there, very much support. However, one of the problems that we're talking about now, which is that these participation fees have increased, is partially because they kicked Russia out, right? Because Russia, like you said, huge country, huge public broadcaster, huge market.
I think the irony of it is that Russia is a huge reason why the cost of Eurovision increased. Because after they hosted in 2009, the expectation of what a Eurovision looked like went up drastically.
Do you cap the budget that a country can spend on an act? Yes. And so to talk about why this might be a problem, Eurovision is a spectacle.
There's the element that we've discussed before with when Adele did her Vegas show.
Yeah.
That it's not that Adele doesn't want to do a big show when she tours arenas around the world, but she still knew that she had to like literally set fire to the rain in the Vegas show. There's a Vegas showmanship. There's a Vegas size of spectacle that is expected.
I thought a simple little song, because of its quality, will always win at Eurovision.
As I go, okay, maybe someone can build a rocket ship and you can't. Okay, the rocket ship isn't necessarily what's needed, but to what Martin talked about, where like anyone can afford projections. But I was like, yes, but it kind of stands out. Like,
and also, how good are those projections if you like can only afford like
and there's
the guy on Fiverr who's going to, I 100% agree with you. The reason why caps have sort of become a popular solution is this tension that we've talked about, right? It's like Eurovision is reliant on participation fees. And this either means they're charging small countries a lot of money, which makes it harder for them to literally be in Eurovision. Or it means they're charging the larger countries a lot of money, which then means in order to keep those larger countries in the coalition, they have to sometimes bend the rules for these larger countries, which creates a total other inequality. So it's very much, I think, between a rock and a hard place in a certain way. But there is, I think, a great hope out there. And this is where we come to the development of sponsorship at Eurovision.
Public broadcasters are funded over either the national budget or by TV licenses. A TV channel that stands separate from commercial interest. It's not there just to sell products. It's there to do public service. The thing that's interesting is what started breaking this was sports. In sports, the Olympic Committee or the World Cup or whatever would not allow a TV channel to blur the logo on your suit. If a public broadcaster wanted to show the Olympics, wanted to show the World Cup, etc., they themselves couldn't put ads on there, but they weren't allowed to blur these logos. And I know in Norway, part of the discussion was, so what you've done is you've said that we can put private funding into sports, but not the arts.
So in 1993, you kind of had the first behind-the-scenes commercial sponsorship. More and more host cities bringing in local sponsors to fund things like you said, Eurovision Village. We see like logos in the press room, like in fan zones.
Importantly, at that time, those sponsors I kept separate from the Eurovision logo.
Yes. This all gets supercharged, right, in the 2010s. The EBU created a sort of global sponsor and a national sponsor category. So again, we're not talking about logos on the TV show itself, but we started to see much more official branding, like backdrops to press conferences, event tickets. And then as we move into the digital age, it's much more of a gray area when you're talking about YouTube, right?
YouTube is already a private company owned by Google.
So it's like you're seeing ads on that webpage anyway, right?
Eurovision realizes the stepping stone is we can exist as privately sponsored when we're not a TV program.
And it's been a constant like expansion since then, right?
Yes.
So what this has all been leading to is that like currently we have a broadcast that is still funded in large part by participation fees. That has been trending down. The reason is because
of
sponsorship.
Oh, 100%.
So that between a rock and a hard place thing that we were talking about before, you know, either you charge the small countries more and then they can't afford to be in it, or you charge the large countries more and they get even more power than they have. Suddenly, there's potentially a way out. The argument that I would make for Eurovision really kind of hitting pedal to the metal on finding ways to monetize the contest, and I do think that this is partially the reason Montenegrin is there. So
I mean, he literally said one of the big reasons I was brought in is the financial sustainability of the contest.
Yes. I would be in favor of a lot more monetization, a lot more logos, different places. If some portion of that money was going to subsidize the countries that are at least saying they can't afford the participation fee or they can't show up at Eurovision and put on an act that actually is going to compete, giving them a shot at the finals. If it just becomes Eurovision is making everybody more money, I'm less interested in this new sort of like, let's slap a logo on everything.
Well, I think the reality is right now to produce the show that they do now with the old percentage model of participation fees, everyone's participation fees would at least double. Because the reality is that as the cost of the contest has grown exponentially, the participation fees have not. So while the countries might go, okay, it didn't get cheaper for us to participate, it didn't get that much more expensive.
There are a lot of countries that have said participation fees are a problem. What I have not heard from anyone in the organization is we actually take these countries seriously at all, that this is a problem. Montenegrin literally said, like, he is in disagreement with the public statements of these smaller countries.
Well, right. But I also think the reality is that, you know, these participation fees are quite low for a lot of these small countries. In many ways, Eurovision should be commended for the fact that many organizations like it would not.
The organizations like it do not have the limits on sponsorship that Eurovision has, right? So either you're saying this is an organization of public broadcasters, therefore, like, there are a lot of limits on what you can do as far as revenue. A country like Montenegro being like, yeah, we can't do it this year. The reason is we don't have enough money to be in the contest.
Right,
if the EBU's answer to that
but a lot
is,
of that
I don't believe you,
but no.
or literally like what Montenegrin said, which is, I don't buy that that's a problem for anybody.
Well, that's sort of what he says. But,
What do you disagree with?
No, but I
about
think
that?
the thing is, when we're talking about cost, it's not just the participation fee.
All I'm saying is that, like, we sat down with Montenegrin. He said participation fees aren't a problem because they're prorated. Then when you brought up special effects, he goes, well, listen, they're at cost. There was no part of that interview where he was like, yeah, I hear these concerns.
The thing is, like, you look at the fact that, like, some of the smallest countries in the world have access to the biggest stage in the world, and it's always been done through a system that has made it financially much more accessible.
If you go down the list of countries in the IOC, like, there are a lot of very, very tiny, very, very poor countries.
This idea that it's like the EBU's sole responsibility to make sure that no matter the finances of each broadcaster, no matter the political interest in supporting something, that they are always responsible for making sure that anyone can participate financially, I don't think is right. What does the IOC do to make sure that people in poor communities have access to a pool so they can learn to swim from a young age? What do the IOC?
They don't.
Right.
And Eurovision isn't paying for singing lessons. And that's fine. What I'm saying is, like, talking just about participation fees. In the case where you're not allowing countries to find as many ways to finance their Eurovision participation, it is more incumbent on you as an organization, if your stated purpose is we want more countries, and not just rich countries, and all kinds of countries to get access to what this thing is, particularly if we're going to make this a little bit about values. I'm not here being like, Eurovision is terrible. I watch it. I like it. It's a great broadcast for the countries who are in it. It's wonderful. I'm not saying fuck the EBU. My thing is, like, in weighing the values of Eurovision, something very important, and the thing that I think is most interesting about it is the element of cultural exchange. If the only argument that I get back from Montenegrin is this show is going to be as big and spectacularly as we want it to be, and that's where the money is going to go, and it's not going to go with an eye towards increasing fairness, I don't think that's the right future for the organization.
Organizations should always strive to do better and do more. But my point is that, like, you look at equivalence and, like, the idea that they're already charging the difference between 350,000 euros and 40,000 euros, that clearly has to do with wanting incentives to bring these smaller countries in. Historically, poor countries have participated in Eurovision significantly. As an organization, generally speaking, I think they've done a great job with that.
Money is not the only reason why a country will give for non-participation or for dropping out. Several applications for Eurovision have been denied because the applying broadcaster is not a full member of the EBU. The example of Kazakhstan is kind of one of the clearer ones, right? So Kazakhstan is an associate member of the EBU and was actually given special permission to participate in junior Eurovision, but not Eurovision itself. On the other hand, you have Australia, who was given special permission to be in Eurovision proper.
Australia asked many times
Yes.
and got denied many times.
Right. This is why I think the EBUs need to start thinking of this in a more systematized way, right? Because it's like,
totally.
I take my pot shots at Australia, but if the goal is expansion, then letting Australia in is a good idea.
Sure.
Right? Now that they're actually, like, thinking about expanding as a mandate, a more regularized process should be developed. And I think once we develop that system, we can talk about, like, that tension between a Eurovision as a festival with a cultural purpose versus the commercial, right? Like, Australia is a great example of, like, that's a great decision to make for the commercial health of the contest. Kosovo most recently was rejected from Eurovision this past year. Now, Kosovo is in the European broadcasting area. Unlike Australia, though, it is not recognized as a country by some of the EBU members. Now, to be clear about this, most EBU members recognize Kosovo as a country. There is a set of countries that, mostly because they are concerned about their own internal separatist groups, like Spain is a perfect example. Spain is worried about Catalonian independence, always. So they don't typically like recognizing countries that are that look separated out.
You have to scrutinize a little bit harder someone joining who's never been a part of, as opposed to the ones who are already part of the coalition. It's a little bit harder to go, well, Spain, if you don't acknowledge Kosovo, you're gone.
If Eurovision lets a country in, and that means because of that, other countries leave, I go, that's not Eurovision kicking out those other countries, right? Like, I'm no fan of Israel's politics, but Lebanon, Jordan
could participate.
They can participate in Eurovision. Morocco can participate.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
If they join, Israel doesn't leave. Who's the one requiring the one to leave?
But so that's why, exactly. And so I'm in total agreement with you on that. But that's why I look at a country, particularly like Kosovo, and I go, given the backdrop that, Eurovision is pushing against the idea that they're kind of like a Western dominant colonialist project. Take advantage where you can of like being inclusive and making the point that like this isn't just about the Arab countries in Israel.
And I actually think it would be helpful to be kind of public in these decisions. And it comes back to, what I said to Martin Green in the interview, where I said that, I think something that Eurovision is grappling with more and more, in a combination of Eurovision fans have become increasingly super fans, and in an increasingly digital world, is 20 years ago, no one cared about watching the draw of which semifinal they end up in.
100%.
Like, no one cared about that. But now...
And now you can watch that draw with a little advertisement for Bailey's in the corner. I think you're right. I think that, regularized process, take advantage of sponsorships, and maybe give some of that money to the little people.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I've always said that with Eurovision, I want it as broad as possible.
Yes. Going back to the initial framing around Intervision is like, it's not a bad idea to have a special eye towards these countries that are often talked about as on the fence between hemispheres, between umbrellas of influence.
Absolutely. Do we want them to travel towards Turkey and Hungary? Or?
I think that is a perfect place to leave it for now. Yes.
I love that. We don't know who's going to come back next. But what I do know is that this episode ain't over yet. Speaking of Montenegro returning, we have Rambo Amadeus on the podcast, who has represented Montenegro at Eurovision.
Yes. I mean, Rambo Amadeus, as you'll hear, is very much an avant-garde icon in Montenegro. His Eurovision song, Euro Nero, broadly is about the conflict within a small nation like Montenegro joining the broader European community. And so he's kind of like a perfect interview for this episode where that's exactly what we're talking about.
Then we sit down and play a game with Nico Carney, New York-based comedian, to introduce him to Eurovision through the lens of Montenegro.
Yes, Nico was a great interview. He actually is someone who we have both seen multiple times.
Oh, great comedian.
He's truly hilarious. So without further ado, let's listen to a little bit of Euro Nero and get to our interviews.
Euro Nero. Euro Nero. Monetary breakdance. Euro Nero. Give me change to refinance.
We are here with Rambo Amadeus, whose 2012 song Euro Nero represented Montenegro at Eurovision. Rambo, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Your artist name, Rambo Amadeus, is an amalgamation of John Rambo and Amadeus Mozart. And initially, when you released Otugo Yesenia, you introduced yourself as Naguib Fazlik Negan. What draws you as an artist to operating under character names or pseudonyms?
When I came to Belgrade, immediately I understood that I needed to make a fool of myself if I wanted to attract attention. And it was not very big sacrifice for me. I used to do it all the life. Despite being a student, I introduced myself as a working laborer and chose the most usual name for the laborer and some most stupid name we couldn't invent at that time. It is Rambo Amadeus, like most absurd. That two identities protect myself from the unhealthy ambition for success, in show business. It was for me really big joke. But what I more made fun with myself and others, that absurdly lead to my popularity, Rambo Amadeus, absurd name. It was, I think, cool because later in the West, I noticed that some porno actress named Carmen Electra, she was also combined,
Yeah.
And later Fatboy Slim, and when I heard first time for Fatboy Slim, I said, oh, cool.
Did you ever try to get a collaboration with Carmen Electra to feature on a song?
Well, I got a wife, it should be explainable,
Fair.
All pop culture is just juggling with commonplaces, My first concert was a concert for 28 vacuum cleaners in Belgrade Cultural Center. And that inspired me to make a thing with a concept. If something is commonplace, it can be used for some point,
Can you explain to our listeners what turbo folk is and what your critique of the genre is? Some critics have associated it with Milosevic and authoritarianism, but I understand you disagree with that.
My definition of turbo folk is quite broader than just the music. Turbo folk is the uncritical use of technology. Technology advances, but ethics and philosophy and taste lag behind. With a sudden shift into capitalism, people started opening radio and TV stations like a fast food kiosk, playing music that had previously only been heard in rural taverns. Liberalization of the media results of the primitivization of media. When you take a singer who performs in a tavern, put her on a big stage with the makeup, light shows, laser, massive sound systems, cyber costumes, you got a turbo folk. But today, for example, we see the absurdity of social media being predominantly used to spread nonsense, hate speech, and conspiracy theories. Wonderful technological invention in uncritical hands, that is turbo folk.
The lyric to Balkan Boy and the music video to Euro Nero both tell the story of this Balkan boy who gets drawn in by the shallow pleasures of capitalism.
Do
you see those two stories as related?
Honestly, I never thought about that, but you are right. I can't escape from myself.
The best artists are that way.
European integration, the modern ethics of Western society on one side, and on other side is traditional values.
Yeah.
And that is confusing. I didn't plan to explain that confusion. I just wanted to express that I'm confused.
Moving to the album M91.
My album was made before the war in 1990. Although anyone with common sense could sense that war was coming, we still couldn't believe it would actually happen. I remember I had a big, old, luxurious black Mercedes, the kind used by politicians. We were mixing the album on March 7, 1991, during the massive protests against Milosevic when tanks were rolled out into the street. The black Mercedes was full of musicians and instruments, and the police chased us down. A special forces unit stopped us right in the middle of the city, thinking that one of the opposition leaders was in that politician Mercedes. They were disappointed, when they saw punks and hippies coming out of the car, pulling instruments out. People were desperately looking for the parties and fun and humor. I'm very lucky guy because I was crazy a lot before of that. And I couldn't become more crazy. Maybe I become more crazy, but I can't know.
You have these songs like Priatelju, obviously a very overtly political and confrontational song. Some other ones engage with politics but are much more playful, like Jemo Voli Jem, about the soldier who loves jam.
Jemo Voli Jem, Jemo Voli Jem.
Well, in that time, huge hit was Pump Up the Jam.
Hilarious. I didn't make that connection.
In disco club, etc., some of guys like very much to, on a wrong way, singing original English song. When the Pump Up the Jam starting to play, one of the guys said, Jamo, Wally Jam, Jamo, Wally Jam. And I said, oh, very nice point. I'm going to make song.
In the 90s, you were touring the newly independent Balkan nations. And I think you were the first Montenegrin performer to visit post-war Bosnia.
I arrived there a year before Belašević. But since I called myself Rambo, I felt a bit inappropriate for me to hide behind Umprov. My drummer Goran and I started the car and we drove through Umprov for checkpoints on our own without an escort. We felt some tense until we got on the stage. But once we did, the audience were, wow, ludilo then.
Can you talk about your collaboration with Åsne Seierstad and how that came about?
Jeg rodde meg ut på Seiergrunnen, det var om morgonen tidlig.
She came to Belgrade. She was wandering around the small number of the foreigners in the city, and her kindness made it so that my great friend and poet Skanda, she and I met several times. I told her that I would give an interview for her book, but only if she sang as a guest of my song. Even though it was total lottery how she would sing or what she would. But however, in my conceptual work, I really didn't matter. It didn't matter how she sang.
That's amazing.
As someone who grew up in Norway, Åsne Seierstad is a name you know very well. She's released a bunch of books. She's a journalist, but not known for being a singer.
I talk to her about all sorts of things, mostly joking, but still careful not to let my own words come back to haunt me later.
Yeah, you got to be careful around those journalists.
Later, I looked at her book and my interview inside, and I saw some completely twisted and falsified sentences.
Oh, really?
I couldn't have said even in my dreams, and it was like an unpleasant experience. Later, I heard that she was in Iraq and used to live in some family. I heard it was also an unpleasant experience for that.
For them too.
Yes.
Oh, really? You should just re-edit her song.
Re-edit her song with her worst takes.
All were same.
In the late 90s, you announced that you were leaving music. Why did you want to leave, and why did you eventually decide to come back?
My wife was pregnant, and we have a small child, and I decided to grow children in some, calmer place, But
Yeah.
I was not thinking enough good. Then I fixed to go to Amsterdam. I don't know, maybe because of hashish. I can't explain now.
That's
And
a good reason.
I made that Kiss Me Goodbye concert, leave money to wife, and go in Amsterdam like first to start to work. And after a few days, I start to work as a physical laborer, I was like demolition man. I liked it very much. I demolished, walls in the houses, etc. It was for my nerves. It was super.
In your music, you demolished wars, and then later you demolished walls.
Well, I would like to make something good.
Yeah.
To make something nice. But somehow, if you want to be honest artist, you can't make a song as some kind of commercial product.
Right.
Song has to be your inner conflict, inner fire, and some kind of autotherapy. Then my wife came after 6 months, pregnant, but my wife couldn't stand that I don't have an engineer's income, just physical income. And she said, no, I'm going to birth my baby to my doctor in Belgrade. And I couldn't say anything about that,
Yeah.
She got decision and I decided to be with her, and that's all. And Prince Hassan, it was Prince Hassan, the best hashish in Amsterdam.
Well, you can always go back occasionally, pick it up,
This year I were like 3 days and I didn't smoke. I said,
Oh, not even that Princess on.
because I couldn't find it, I
Oh,
didn't want to try another shits.
Yeah.
My wife sent me directly from Amsterdam to Slovenia to make 3 concerts. Year after that was bombing of the Serbia. I sent family to Austria, to auntie, and that's it.
Can you talk about the inspiration and process of writing Euro Nero?
Director of national TV invited me and said, we haven't been on Eurovision few years. We want to attract attention on Montenegro as a touristical destination. We now have that logo, Wild Beauty, and we need the beast to promote the beauty, He didn't say that. I understood it like that, I said, okay, do you know what kind of music I make? And that because I can't win, I'm making the song, maybe I will be the last. He said, no, last place, no problem, just attract attention. And I understood that as a dream job,
As someone who went to Eurovision, as a critic of it as much as a competitor, what was your experience of the contest like?
My view was not changed. That's kitsch, sense, effects, some dancers jumping around. It was boring,
Yeah.
But I was impressed with the Baku because the caviar was ridiculously cheap. In some shack across from the hotel. In those 15 days, I probably ate 5 kilos of caviar. And I spent a lot of time on the toilet.
Oh my God.
As for Eurovision itself, I showed up there jokingly with a fake beard that I borrowed from the Belgrade Opera. When I met the head of the stage for the first time, I had the fake beard on. I remember he was genuinely impressed with my approach. I arrived in a truck with a wooden Trojan donkey that we had made in a workshop on a suburb of Baku. Meanwhile, the Montenegrin official delegation was getting out from the luxury Mercedes again, and that stage manager was waiting for me in the front of the Mercedes. And obviously astonished to see a guy with a fake beard carrying a wooden donkey who was supposed to perform on Eurovision, calling himself Rambo Amadeus, Later, he asked me very politely to lend him a fake beard, and he wore it proudly all day, Good guy, very, very good guy, clearly familiar with English humor, even though he was English.
That's absolutely incredible.
Now, Euro Nero is about the Eurozone debt crisis, but more broadly discusses the tensions between the local national identity and pan-European identity. This is also a tension at the heart of Eurovision. In what ways do you see Eurovision as a metaphor for the struggles of European integration?
I hope the taste of the Europe is a bit better than aesthetic forced upon Eurovision, But maybe that's where the catch lies. Eurovision doesn't tolerate original authorship. It insists on perfect interpretation, costumes, light show, stage movements. It resembles more of a rhythmic gymnastic competition than a music festival. If we translate this to politics, it would mean that the EU expects candidates to perfectly imitate EU standards instead of allowing for the true integration in a philosophical, social, and political level.
Related to that, one of the things we talk about on this podcast a lot is Eurovision's increasing struggles in the face of a fracturing Europe and the rise of right-wing nationalism. So do you think that this nationalist backlash that we're seeing now was caused by the way European integration was attempted? And what do you think went wrong with the process of European integration that now so many countries are reacting to?
Well, the political pendulum always swings. During the World War II, it was the right wing, very right, After that, in 60s, 70s, hippie, everything goes left. I wanted to be smart, but I'm not. You're making me be serious, and that's.
You don't want to.
I think the real problem is that all ideologies are dead now. Ecology didn't bring yet new ideology, but step by step, I think that ecology will become a new ideology.
Focusing on Montenegro, do you think more integration into European institutions such as the EU is good for the country? And are you happy to see the country back in Eurovision?
Please, Europe community is necessary for us. I hope that this delay of 13 years is not made by my song. I hope that my song is confirming my wish to connect, to be part of the EU.
On the other side, how worried are you about Vucic? Seemingly more and more, he's talking about a greater Serbia again and all of this.
I was worried in 1991 about Yugoslavia, the country I was born in. I don't understand why everyone is surprised now. Yugoslavia skillfully contained the territorial ambitions of all members. He maybe believes that he can finally achieve that. But he's just talking, while the border crossing between Albania and Kosovo have already been removed.
You've branched out as an artist over the years, writing film scores, acting, and even doing voice work on The Lion King. How do these different artistic modes inform each other and your songwriting, if at all?
No, they don't. It is like you got a garden, and produce tomato and pomodoro and cabbage, and you are not worried that pomodoro will somehow influence on the cabbage.
What's next for the garden? What's next for you?
Well, I am preparing for the internal life.
That's good.
I load all my stuff to the net, then I think that is the way I will live forever. If you are artist and you got some kind of ego, because without ego you can't be artist.
Yeah.
What is better for the ego than to put him somewhere
forever.
Yes. Artificial intelligence is for now super tool. I tried him to help me about lyrics.
Oh, really? How did that go?
Not very well.
Rambo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
A great conversation.
Euroverse.
So with Montenegro returning to the contest this year, we wanted to take a look at how the region has changed vis-a-vis Eurovision. Yugoslavia was famously kicked out of the contest during Milosevic's brutal regime, and now many of the independent Balkan nations are members in their own right.
Is there a material difference in the kind of numbers sent through compromise between various groups attempting to share one country versus what gets sent by a more unified cultural actor? It's a game we're calling the Full Montenegro.
Yes. Now, to help us with this, we're thrilled to have comedian Nico Carney. Nico made his late night debut in 2024 on Late Night with Seth Meyers and was named a comic you should know by Vulture. He also co-hosts the popular podcast Boys Club. Nico, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm thrilled. I know very little about Eurovision, but I've already learned so much just from the intro, so I'm excited.
But the history of Yugoslavia and Montenegro is
that's
right
why
both
I mean,
sides.
ignore all the comedy things. This is what I'm here for. Yeah.
I think that there is like a brand that we're developing of like just bringing people on and being like, this person is very accomplished. Now here's the subject matter that they know absolutely nothing. So Nico, this is the way the game's going to work. We are going to play you a song, and you're going to guess whether it was sent by Yugoslavia before the country broke up,
Okay.
or whether it was sent by Montenegro after Montenegro became an independent nation. The idea is, hopefully through talking about these songs, we can get at a little bit of how the boundaries and makeup of a nation can end up affecting the kind of music a particular country chooses.
But before we start, Nico, what do you know about Eurovision going into this?
Okay, so my limited understanding of Eurovision largely comes from the Will Ferrell movie that got made a few years ago.
Amazing.
I feel like that helped bring it into some of the cultural conversation.
Yes.
I understand it to be a singing competition of pop stars, and it's pretty nuts with the things that happen there. And it sounds like from what y'all are saying that there's also this like geopolitical underbelly to it.
I feel like we could just wrap the segment now. Like, that's pretty much it. Like,
That's
yeah.
perfect.
I'm a big soccer fan. I pay a lot of attention to like the sort of geopolitical side of soccer as well. Is there like a governing sort of body,
No, it's
like a FIFA type
Yes.
of thing?
It's a great question.
Except not as like universally awful as FIFA.
Yeah, true. One of the worst organizations we have.
Yeah. So the FIFA of Eurovision is the EBU, which is the European Broadcasting Union.
Okay.
So technically, it's a competition between public broadcasters, not necessarily nations.
Okay.
But Eurovision has a flag parade. You know, when you vote, you don't vote. It doesn't show the list of the artist names. It shows the countries. So you're like voting for the country. Of course, anything where you have flags and countries voted for countries, politics get involved.
Okay, so is there like, let's say for Norway, for example, like is there an internal Norwegian competition to select sort of the artist that's going to make it to the actual Eurovision?
The EBU overall does not meddle into how each broadcaster picks their artist. Each national selection has widely different rules because it doesn't have to follow the... It's like, you don't have to be in the like championship of FIFA for the rules in soccer to be the same.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
But that's what can be confusing.
So
you see me trying to do the soccer metaphors.
That was so good.
Really hard.
No, it works though.
I was just so surprised that you remembered FIFA during that. It does lead to these like really interesting situations. Like with Yugoslavia, there was this sort of like middle step, right? Between like 2003 and 2006, like some of the countries had broken off, but Serbia and Montenegro was one country, Serbia and Montenegro.
Mm-hmm.
And actually like what they did is an open competition and where you could really see, oh, Serbia and Montenegro are going to break up is the year that they did before the referendum, they couldn't choose a Eurovision song because the Serbians wanted a Serbian act and the Montenegrins wanted another.
Wow. Is it only European nations? Is it true to the Eurovision titles?
So that is absolutely it is not only European nations. So the way it's arranged now is basically it's Europe and then Israel and then Australia. Which, you know, they have different like exceptions for why like Australia is in.
Morocco was in 1 year.
Magnus grew up with Eurovision. So anything that Eurovision does seems totally normal to him. And he has like a very ready explanation for why Australia is in the contest. I like learned about Eurovision like 4 or 5 years ago. So like it's just straight up insane to me. But maybe we should dive into our game.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So Nico, the first song we have for you is Tai Chi with a song that translates to Let's Go Crazy.
That's the other thing I guess I know about these songs is that they also like their American title is always like something that's like,
oh,
let's go crazy.
Yeah.
It's like a very hyper pop. Okay, number 1.
Ne moraš biti bogat I lijep, samo budi dobar I pokloni mi cvijet.
I love her dress. She's got this nice little pink number. This is feeling like a liberated song, so I'm feeling Montenegro on this one. If I knew what she was saying, maybe I would have more.
I mean, the song's called Let's Go Crazy.
True, it is called Let's Go Crazy.
I'll give you a couple guesses.
That's true. We're free now. Let's go crazy.
Yeah.
I love that the guitarists in the back are doing a little kicks.
Yeah.
Very fun. They're getting in on it. She kind of looks like the Montenegro version of Marilyn Monroe.
100%.
Yeah. Nice little spin. I think I'm going to go with Montenegro because it felt pretty upbeat overall. Like you said, it's called Let's Go Crazy. She seemed pretty loose. I feel like looking at the costuming is always like helpful for understanding like
How oppressed are you? I can see in your clothing.
Yeah, you know what I mean? This is a free woman singing in a short dress. It feels like it's there's something liberated about her.
So unfortunately, that is a Yugoslavian number.
Really? Dang it.
This was one of a few Yugoslavian numbers in the contest directly after the fall of the Iron Curtain.
Oh.
So the number very much, obviously, like with its kind of like Marilyn Monroe nods and stuff like that, is a certain kind of freedom.
Yeah, it does have like sort of a 1950s idealistic domesticated freedom woman.
Yeah. But a fun fact about this song is that it was actually the last Yugoslavian song to be in Eurovision because I guess this isn't a fun fact because shortly after that, Milosevic and the genocide meant that the country was not going to be in Eurovision.
So next up, we have Rambo Amadeus with Euro Nero.
Euroskeptic, analphabetic, try not to be hermetic.
We've got some hooded figures coming out.
Yeah.
It's giving like Dementor vibes from Harry Potter. I see a Trojan horse that's feeling warlike. Just shed the jacket. Oh my god, I was not ready for him.
So few people are.
This is a man I would only describe as like if you like had like an uncle who was like still in a rock band, like playing a jam band at a bar. It's not as much movement as Marilyn had.
No.
He's rapping almost. Yeah. Okay, but this is definitely I'm thinking either right before or a like post-revolution song. Maybe before if it's like calling for revolution because that's feeling like his vibe. But I don't know how free they were to like speak out. So that's where I'm. But again, the graphics on the back of this are crazy. So my impressions on that, it starts very dark and like like he's got like a hooded figure. And he's you don't see who he is. He's just talking, and it's like very spooky. And then he pulls it out, and you could never imagine who this man would be. I'm not kidding. It really does look like a guy who's like dung 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 dung, like a rock band. 100%. But he's talking about saving the children from the revolution. So I'm gonna guess maybe Yugoslavia before. It feels very tied to this cultural moment.
I do feel like this is going to be a game where like things become clearer as it goes on.
Sure.
But no, this is a song from Montenegro.
Okay.
So our good friend Rambo.
Rambo Amadeus.
Also, I love that name is great.
It's
Rambo Amadeus.
Everything about him is the most.
Yeah.
So recently, like we reached out to him to like do an interview, and he wrote back as if he was this other guy. He goes, "I am Rambo's friend John, and I need to make sure that you aren't an AI bot." And the first thing he wrote, he was like, first, send 3 answers to this email address. You can choose the questions you're answering, but do not send the questions. Just send the answers. So I did.
Was he an AI? I'm like so confused.
No, I know. And this is like literally, I send these answers to this email address. It bounces back. The email address doesn't exist.
Of course.
So then I follow up and I'm like, here are my answers. The other address didn't work. And he goes, the czar appreciates your answers.
He said something along the lines of like, well, thank you for entertaining me this far. I guess we can set up an interview.
He had like one more question where he was like, what are your plans for the future?
Broad question.
Yeah.
To join Euroverse.
So I can't wait. But so the song was regarded as a satire towards the relations between Montenegro and the European Union. During the time when Euro Nero was made, Europe was suffering from a debt crisis. So Rambo said, the EU and Euro are in some kind of neurotic situation, so I wanted to help. However, Euro Nero is not a cure, it is just a diagnosis. Euro Nero is a diagnostic song with therapeutic side effects.
I love that.
It's not giving the vibe of the email.
Yeah.
This
now,
also...
This guy's clearly an interesting fella.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, that was the kind of thing. I was like looking at like who could be a good season 2 guest, and I just watched that number, and I was like, I actually don't need to know anything more. I think this is going to be a good interview.
Yeah, no, he's also not like what I had in mind for like if I was, like because he doesn't have that sort of like hyper pop vibe that they, at least my new vision into this is what it seems like.
Rambo Amadeus did not win Eurovision, but I do like to imagine that if I went to Montenegro, it would just be statues of Rambo Amadeus everywhere. Like,
you could definitely get a shirt with his face on it, no doubt.
I may have custom ordered one already.
That would be awesome. Yeah. I love that.
So next is Sergei Chetkovich with a song called My World.
U srcu mom spavaš sama. Moj svijet čuvam za.
The dudes in this just look. Oh, ice skating! Wow.
Yeah.
That is the most Eurovision reaction I've ever heard. The dudes in this. Oh, ice skating.
Okay, that's really beautiful. The ice skating. I just can't get over how normal looking he is. I don't know.
No, 100%.
Like he just has such a. We just grabbed this guy off the streets of Yugoslavia and said, "Get up here." Beautiful voice, though. I mean, I can't get over this scene is it's just so well done. Like all this. I mean, her where she's skating is lighting up. It's really, really impressive. All the lighting and stuff that they do. That must be just such a long production to make. Wow. Okay, that was more of a ballad.
Yes,
I'm gonna say Yugoslavia.
So it is Montenegro.
I'm bad at this game.
Well, and look, this is a carefully constructed game.
yes.
We're definitely learning a lot as we go. So it's a longing love song.
Mhm.
Thinking about the Tai Chi song and how general it felt in a certain way, like how much the aesthetics of it, like you said, played into something that was like Marilyn Monroe and stuff like that. It felt like very much like, oh, right, this is kind of maybe what you have to do when you have a lot of like ethnic groups with a lot of different opinions,
Right.
like who
A
don't
compromise number.
who don't have like
Sure,
the
yeah.
exact same culture. But like then you get a number like My World where it's so specific, like
Yeah.
or even the Rambo Amadeus song where you're just like, I don't know that I've seen anything like this.
Sure, yeah.
Especially a country that is moving towards being split up. Sometimes it might be easier to unify around a culture that is not even yours.
Yeah,
Right, totally.
Something else to just talk about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, and I think that
We like Maryland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of the thing that you said, Nico, like where it's like that Tai Chi song is so, there was such an optimism to that moment.
Mhm.
Like we're in the clear, like oncoming freedom, like all of that. And even with independence, the constant like tensions and threats from your neighbors these days, so it makes sense that there would be a little bit more of a sort of darkness or a longing in the,
Moving on. Now we have audio by Knez.
All right, I'm looking at more of like a group here. Again, I can't get over this lighting and stuff is like so cool. A little dancing. Very limited dancing, I would say, but they're dancing nonetheless. It's not about how much you move, it's that you move together.
Yeah.
How did this guy get the lead? All these beautiful ladies on here, and he's
I
the
know,
lead
it's-
singer. Like, what is happening? All right, I am gonna guess Montenegro in this one.
Nailed it.
Yes.
So wait, give us a little bit of the thought process.
Okay.
Like,
I mean, I couldn't understand what they were saying, but it felt like the vibes of it with like this big epic thing was that it was supposed to be like harkening back to some sort of big epic something with like red and like a dark time or like an oppressive time.
yeah.
But it felt more like it was reflective.
It's like you said, like the dance was so specific. The presentation, that guy, like it felt like something that was coming out of a culture
Mhm.
rather than
Government like whitewashing of the
yes,
performance.
yeah. Which music, not the only thing Milosevic whitewashed. No, not great. So next up, we have the song "Rock Me" by the band Riva.
All right, we're getting a little of that pop vibe. This is feeling more like 60s, 70s like vibes from like at least like from American impression and stuff. Yeah, I'm getting some really fun outfits here.
Yeah.
Some really fun outfits, some nice little white jackets. Good. Again, the lights. They've always had the lights going for them. This program. They've always been good on that. Ooh, a little guitar. Okay. Yeah, this is. It's giving like 80s vibe. Yeah, for sure. So, my guess on this one is Yugoslavia.
Nailed it.
Yes. Okay, I'm starting to see the pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like they are. It's again like that, similar to that Maryland. Also interesting that for some reason all the Montenegro artists are men and all the Yugoslavian artists are women. Is there anything?
Oh,
was a
that's
reverse?
interesting. I think there is something in like kind of what you pointed out about those other artists, like the two men in particular who were singing those ballads, where it's like they're just like not a traditional like pop type at all. And there is something, I think, as countries like get more sort of specific with their choices, it becomes a little bit like less like what is like a pop song or a pop aesthetic that like everyone can easily get on board with. Another thing that we should say about this song though is it is Yugoslavia's win.
Oh, cool.
So that song won Eurovision.
I mean, they looked great.
It's that same sort of period of time where like things were actually very optimistic in Yugoslavia, right?
Yeah.
Like literally it was the year before Tai Chi. So it was like the Iron Curtain had just fallen, like you said, 80s. And it was just this sort of, here we are, new future. Isn't this exciting?
Yeah, especially with the style and the hairstyles and like the short cropped jackets and stuff that are really fun.
Yeah.
There's also something about when Yugoslavia's one thing and you're really trying to just show whether you lean east or west. It's actually quite binary as a choice, as opposed to
like we're
more
literally
this culture, this religion, this people. Like that was very complicated within.
Right.
I mean, like literally, like putting Marilyn Monroe up there. Like you're definitely consciously trying to say something.
Yeah.
You don't think it was accidentally though? Like, oh my gosh, we wore the same
You
dress.
look just like her.
So then we have Igranka by Husi.
Oh, astronauts. Okay, this is giving space race. Okay, it's like a bunch of rapping astronauts. 2 rapping astronauts? I can't tell what this other woman is doing. She does not have a helmet, so she's dying in space. Whatever she's up to. Yeah, what is she, like an alien or something? What is her deal? But again, lights, smoke. Oh, no, she's the best singer. Okay, she's like some sort of space agent who does not need a helmet.
Her voice is that good.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, she is. She's got something else entirely to bring to the table. Okay, I'm also noticing there's some cool camera work with this. It's like adding to the production value. Damn, there's so many people there. Where do they host these?
They're hosted in arenas.
I would assume so. Yeah, I mean, there's a bazillion people in there. I'm gonna say Montenegro for this one.
Nailed
Nailed
it.
it.
Yes.
Okay, so what's the supporting evidence? Like, what are you thinking?
Well, part of me is maybe not cheating, but inferring from context clues of the years, this felt like just a more
more
generally
modern
thing, especially with the camera work. But yeah, this just has like again that specificity of like a really different voice. Again, there's like this rap element to it, and these like astronaut characters. But also, this is our first
Montenegrin woman.
So, but again,
Who-
down the line.
who
maybe.
is this year?
Oh,
sorry.
no, same thought. This year's entry for Montenegro. Nina herself.
Nina Zizek.
But also the band stated this about the song, that it was a typical hip hop song with a voice of an angel. And the idea was to spread positive energy with the song. It's
I
not
love
beautiful.
that. I love that.
I really like Nina Zizek's voice. I find it very funny that the first descriptor was voice of an angel.
Yeah.
Because there is something very guttural
Yeah,
about it.
still, she is like in a full like, "Oh, I'm coming over there. Like she
Oh,
does not
yeah,
look angelic in that moment.
no.
She's storming over.
Although,
No
you know,
shade to Nina. She has a beautiful, beautiful.
but
performance.
these are some hard living angels, right? They've seen some things.
Yeah, that's
so
true. I mean,
it's
this
like,
is an angel rising from the ashes of.
I think we are now ready for our final
I
song.
think we
Let's
are.
do it.
So this is Novi Fosili with Ja sam za ples.
We got some guitar back.
I wanna dance, hey, oh, oh, yeah, such a place, oh yeah.
This is reverting back to the first one in many ways. We've got a woman in front of a band. She's got blonde hair. Kind of similar to that like 50s, 60s housewife dressed down to her mid-calf. Tastefully hot. Sort of, you know. But it's got like a very fun beat to it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Yugoslavia on this one.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
I mean, nailed it.
And I will say, this song placed 4th, so I think good on identifying the
Yeah.
people pleasing beat.
There's a refrain that's catchy. It's a clearly like upbeat bubblegum sort of song.
Yeah, and in fact, this band was known as the Croatian ABBA.
And similarly, ABBA split up later. Like Yugoslavia.
okay. Sorry, that took me a second.
There's more of like a radical element to some of the other, like the later ones.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
like
yeah.
though they don't have that sort of bubblegum like effervescence of the earlier works, almost like a naive freedom versus a tried and true like this is a
Yes.
freedom on my terms
Right.
versus
Yeah,
like
like
a freedom of like oh let's forget that anything bad could happen or that there's any struggles here
Right.
because we're Westernish now.
Yeah,
Right.
and also especially this is what you're showing to the world. So
Yeah.
you're like, look, everything's fine.
Right.
Yeah. So the performances are in May. Are they accessible to people in the US? Like can we watch them? anywhere?
Yes.
Peacock has the rights.
All right,
So it's
Peacock.
like this is their big theory between the Will Ferrell movie, Peacock getting the rights. It's definitely increasing
Yeah.
the accessibility over here. So
That's cool.
will you be watching?
Yeah, I mean now I'm definitely gonna check it out because
And you
I've
and
known
when
so much.
Montenegro come on, you can just be like, oh Nina.
Of course, yes, my
I've
girl.
seen her
She's
before.
back, the voice of an angel.
The voice of an angel.
I'm gonna really flex on everybody, and Actually, there was a big shift when the country split.
I'm curious to find out how much of a flex that ends up being.
You're like, what are you talking about? Yeah. Name the capital of any of those countries. That's not what I said.
Yeah. But they're Eurovision acts. All right, Nico, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was a blast. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Euroverse.
Thank you so much to Rambo Amadeus. Thank you so much to Nico Carney. And Charlie, next time we're going to be at Eurovision.
Yes, in bright and sunny Basel.
Yes. I
hope it's bright and sunny.
Well, maybe the Alps cast a big shadow.
Oh, that's true. See, I definitely came in last place in my 6th grade geography bee. So, but I think that was an imbalance due to participation fees.
Oh, I see. But yeah, what we know is that Eurovision is coming up real soon.
Yes.
Next time you hear from us, it will be from the press center at Eurovision in Basel. Next time you hear from us, the first semifinal will have already happened.
Yes. And I'm very happy with the results.
Yes. We'll be back next week. But until then,
Happy Eurovision.